and g'day there from down under. My name is Bistan, country Victorian gamer of Star Wars Armada, Star Wars Legion, X-Wing, Dystopian Wars, Bolt Action, Flames of War, Battletech and many other games. Today I am starting my last of my Pathfinders for Star Wars Legion, a character which is described in this book as Bistan. Now I do have to apologise. My first video that I was doing on Bistan, I actually found that for the first 5 minutes I was showing an image whereby you couldn't actually see anything because of the glow. The reflection of the light actually caused the piece of paper to basically not be able to be seen. So I'm cutting this in front of that video. So if you hear suddenly the volume change, etc., now you know what the reason is. Starting off with, this is the book that I've referred to pretty much all the way through, the painting of the Pathfinders. It's a really good book, written by Pablo Hidalgo with illustrations by Kemp Remillard. It's a very handy book. Any of these ultimate visual guides is very handy for painting. So this is Bistan. His weapon that the model has is this repeater iron blaster. You'll notice a couple of things about Bistan is that he's quite different from the rest of the Pathfinders in that he isn't wearing a uniform per se. What he's wearing is more of a jumpsuit. And the jumpsuit, you can see it's got quite a lot of green. Almost like a Russian uniform green and a slightly darker camo green. You'll also notice that he's got some metal collars around the edges of his neck, sleeves, and on the bottom you can see that he's got a fair bit of like metal bracketing for his, looks like a parachute jump pack that he's got on the back of it. So for all of this area, I'm going to be painting it a darker green, much similar to a dark angel green, or quite dark, while the rest of it is more going to be a more camo Russian uniform green. Maybe some of these light areas I might also do in a green ochre colour, sort of thing, just to give some highlights and definition. For skin colour, you can see that it's quite dark, darker than a normal human, with areas that are quite brown and fur. So I'm going to use a tan flesh or a bronze flesh to start it out. Use like a null wash in the area up here to try and get some of that hair facial features. With this area right here, I'm going to try and do like a very light white with some water, and just try and create a bit of a wash with white to do these light fur areas as well. Going to be a very interesting model to paint, I think. So let's show the model itself. There's the model. As you can see, he's got a long blaster, much like most of the others. You can see he's got the collar right there on his neck. The jumpsuit does have those circles, so they'll be important. He does have a backpack of some sort, which there isn't clear defined picture of what his backpack color is, but I suspect that it's similar to this color. Much like a paratrooper's uniform will generally have all of the same color for the harness and the actual backpack, I'm suspecting that that's going to be all the same color. Anyway, I'll pause it here, move the camera, let's start painting. Welcome back. Okay, so I've got two possibility choices of a uniform green. One is a Russian uniform World War II by Flames of War. The other one is yellow-green, also by Flames of War. The rest of the greens that I've got here are quite a bit brighter than these two. So taking him up to this one right here is the Russian uniform, while this one is the yellow-green. I'm thinking going with this Russian uniform is probably going to be the better option, and then adding in either a little bit of a darker shade for those the harness area and the backpack will be more appropriate. So just getting a bit on paint palette. Now, seeing this is the undercoat, doesn't matter if I do get it on anywhere else, because 90% of them, the colors are actually going to be slightly darker when I add shades, etc. The only areas that I don't want to get this green paint on is probably the head, the hands, and trying to avoid the collars as much as possible. One thing to note about working with any type of paint ranges is that you do need to have lots of colors. I think choosing the right type of paint can be almost as important as getting the model right in terms of your gameplay. Many people will say, oh, it doesn't matter too much about how you paint it or how the game is played, as long as you have fun. That's great, and I encourage that. But for anyone that actually enjoys the idea of trying to paint historicals or more so accurate types of miniatures, being able to identify various color schemes that are present and getting the right colors associated with that model can be just as important. So whether you or not you use Games Workshop, whether or not you use Flames of War, Valero, Game Color, anything like that, just knowing what that range has in terms of their various shades can be just as important as price. Now, due to the fact that we have to wait until all this green dries before we can go on and do the next shade of green, I'm going to go along and do this gun right here, which according to the book is his repeater iron blaster. It'll all get painted up in the metal, so the bolt gun metal, and then highlighted with the bronze. Switching brushes to a thinner brush. I'll also use this leftover metal color to do all of their actual collars as well. And that'll save me time later on. So I'll first start off with this top color. So my thinking is that probably each of these metal collars is essentially for a spacesuit. So this metal collar will eventually attach up to some form of helmet, which of course, while Bistan's on the ground fighting, he's probably not wearing. Trying to get all those nooks and crannies sections. Yeah. Now, while I wait for those two sections to dry, I'll put the flesh on his head. I've looked at my paints and I've found this dwarf skin color, which is quite a orangey dark color, which I like the looks of, that I could probably really do it very lightly
in just a smidge of that filthy brown to give it a little bit of a darker tone. Now the face has a lot lighter tones, so I might actually do that in a flat flesh or a elf flesh rather than this dwarf tone. So this section around, let's get in around here will not be done today. So what I want to do is just go back here, cover the ears. Looks like the eyes are also dark. Working my way around the model. Looks like the outside of the nose is the same color as this, but the nostril itself is a darker. And so let's just try and go. Head fur done. There's a couple of small sections there where the grey has shown through, so I'll just lightly apply a bit more. Then I'll darken it with some null wash. For his hands look very, I guess, also in the skin tone of a brown, but not as dark. They, in many ways, it's reminiscent of rhino hide, in that it's got like a pinky tone in between the cracks. So I might just add a little bit of beige brown, see if I can just darken it, that skin tone, ever so slightly. Using a colour palette of any type is pretty good. Helps you to develop your mixing of your colours. Work out, does this actual colour work? And that's a pretty nice lighty brown colour for his hands. always adjusting the angle so you can see more of the model as best as you can. Not very ideal for a video or anything, I understand, but it's what you have to do. And with this leftover brown, I'm going to use it to start shading in some of this fur. Now I'm going to use a little bit of the straight leather brown that I've got here, which is slightly different tone for his boots. Again, if I get any paint on the base, it doesn't matter as much because I still have to paint the top of the base. As well as do the flocking, putting sand on it, etc. And that, I think, is going to be that for the moment. I'll leave it to dry, then I'll start on the next process. So since my previous video on Bistan, I have done some of his facial area and around his hair. I have also gone some shading on his hair, fur on the back. And now I'm going to start doing the second layer of green around the backpack area and around some of the harness area. To it, what I'm doing is I've got my green Russian uniform on the palette, and I'm just adding some black to it to darken it down a little bit. So now, just testing it out on the back. The backpack area. It's going on slightly darker than the regular green that I have used previously, which is exactly what I wanted to do. I want to make sure that it has a good coverage and that when it dries it won't in many ways blend in with the other color. So I'll just do the backpack, wait until it dries, and then test to see if it remains that slightly various tone. So that'll be an hour's time. I'll do another video then.
Here is my finished model of Bistan. As you can see, he's rather green on the uniform. I've used a blend of the darker green of the Warpstone Glow and the Caliban green and a few other greens to get a really dark, almost dark angel green colour. I've also used some of this green ochre here to do a little bit of highlights so it looks a little bit yellow tinged in areas. I've done the weapon and the shoes. All I've got left to do now is a little bit of flesh wash just on the fur underneath his chin, and that's it. So just want to do very, very small amount. Just like so. It's a little bit thick in areas, so I'll just blend off a little bit with a bit of water. There we go. And that's pretty much about it. All I wanted to do with the brown wash. Next up, just to do those rifling ports, just doing a little bit of the null oil. Use a little bit of paper to dry it. And there we have it. So I'll leave this to dry, and like I did with POW, I'll base it with the same materials, sand and grass on the bottom, and also varnish it, and then this one will be also ready for playing on the table. So that's it for Bistan. My next video I'll probably release closer to Christmas time, which will be basically a summary of what I have been getting up to this year and what I plan to do for next year. But for now, from me, Aussie Stan, I will see you next time. Please like, please subscribe, and I will see you on the table. Bye for now.